Oh, there's still the lights are still on, so that's something that's very good. Now, as we're going to notice, the storm is also going to pass over to us directly to the west of Tampa Bay, and here we're also looking at Jacksonville, and then this right now again also looks pretty clear. Oh wait, this looks like it's actually Tampa at Raymond James Stadium. So again, so it should be pretty clear. And then finally we have we're actually here at our senior key map, oh camera, sorry. And right now it looks still cloudy, although, and as I said before, the power is still on. However, we need to keep an eye on this because the storm is going to be passing over Cedar Key to the southwest, and it's going to start maybe up and directly pass next to it, and you're going to feel some bands later on. That's one thing you need to keep alert, because you're not. While it looks cloudy right now and looks harmless, trust me, it's not. There's honest weather coming ahead, so be on the lookout. So right now we're actually still having some weather coming up in Tallahassee, just some light rain, but right now we'll get heavier rain later on. We're still going from Perry down to Cross City out towards Alachua County. We're actually still under the tornado watch that will be going on until 6 a.m. So again, that doesn't mean that there is a tornado. That just means the conditions are right for one. So be careful if you're gonna. So you should actually be in your shelters right now. Get some sleep, but make sure you don't keep your alerts active, and make sure you don't keep your phones on Do Not Disturb. You want to make sure they're alert and loud enough so that way they can wake you up if needed. You also have some rain. If you can go to the south, just directly south of here. Basically south of here, we have some rain that's basically going into like Panama City, but also East Point. And actually, as we see, we actually have some rain basically from the storm, and it's basically going right through. It's going right over Cedar Key. Actually, if we can zoom in there. Yep. Yeah. So Cedar Key, we actually are getting hit with some decently heavy rain. Now we didn't see it on the camera, obviously, because it's dark. But that just makes it even worse because of the fact that since it's dark outside, you don't see any potential threats. So that's something you need to keep an eye on. Do not, as I will always say that, as an advocate for this, make sure you keep your phones not on Do Not Disturb. Make sure your ringers on, and make sure they're loud enough to wake you if need be. So we have some weather. We have some moderate to heavy storms in Cedar Key. Also, we have some moderately heavy showers in Hernando as well, and lighter showers in Chiefland. And if we can zoom out a bit, and we can see the what is it? If we can zoom out and also see, and just go back to the overview, but we will see that we'll be passing through. The eye is going to be mainly passing through next to Pinellas County, but also that we're going to have some the upper bands starting to go through Cedar Key as well. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Now, as we also are seeing, we'll go into like the I-75 corridor from north of Tampa into Lake and Marion, into Sumter and Marion County, especially. We're still seeing some heavy showers. In fact, some of our heaviest showers is in Pinellas County, right near Clearwater, St. Pete, going into not only just downtown Tampa, but also Pinellas Park area as well as into Manatee County and Bradenton as well. So you have to, so keep that in mind as you'll hit these outer bands. They're not going to seem as severe because you're not in the center of the hurricane, but they can still do very much a lot of damage. That's why you need to make sure that you keep an eye on them. And one thing to also keep in mind is that when you have these outer bands, they're going to be more spread out. So you're not going to be hit with the constant wall of rain. You're going to be hit with more so periods of like strong rain, and then you'll get times with no rain at all. And that's just basically, as the outer bands go, they're not going to be continuous. So that's one thing you need to keep an eye on. So as we zoom out, we'll also see, for the most part, we're seeing some bands in Fort Myers, but for the most part, they're starting to work their way, and they're starting to clear out in Fort Myers, but we have the second band right over here. That's going to probably work its way into Fort Myers, so that's something you will have to keep in mind as these bands start to work its way through. So if we go north to, back to Cedar Key, we're going to actually start seeing the bands start to rotate counterclockwise, actually. So as these bands in Lecanto, Spring Hill are going to probably work its way towards Ocala, you're going to also have bands starting to work its way from over here back towards Cross City and follow that counterclockwise direction. So as you go to our IR satellite, this is perfect for not only seeing the storm up at night, but also we can see the mechanism for strengthening. So because the clouds are, because with these darker clouds, they're signifying much colder temperatures, which is allowing for more, moisture to settle in, and just allowing for more intensification. But also, as you'll see, all these stronger bands are going to be coming in towards off the coast of Fort Myers and heading up northeast towards central southern Florida. That's one thing you will have to keep in mind. And then we'll also go to our visible. So we'll also take note that not only are these bands coming through, but if you move up a little bit, you'll see this eye is really starting to form and take its own shape. It loses itself for a minute, but then it starts to reform and really starts to get a well-defined structure. So this is bad because once you have a solidified eye, this allows for more rapid intensification and just an overall stronger storm, which is exactly what we do not want. So it's important that you not only you keep an eye on this, but you understand that because of the storm is strengthening, that if you're not, you need to be sheltering in place if you're not already, and you need to make sure you have everything ready to go if you need to evacuate, and you should be already in your safe place if you haven't done so already. When you go to sleep tonight, make sure you keep your phones not on do not disturb, keep the radar on and loud, and make sure you're ready to go when needed. Now I'm going to pass things off to Robert to discuss more at the wall.
Right. Thank you, Josh. And again, we have this satellite right here showing us really that pinhole eye that Josh just talked about with this storm. It's moving north, maybe a little bit east-north, then it wobbles back west. So, we kind of get a little bit watching these wobbles here and there, but at the end of the day, the track of the storm overall is pretty consistent towards directly the north. And if we could just sort of panel a little bit north so we can see Tallahassee here, I can sort of show you in relation to that. If you take this track going off towards due north towards Tallahassee, what we're seeing here is a bit of pretty much it's almost dead on for a landfall just east of Tallahassee, as the NHC cone just showed. And actually, if we could pull that cone up with the satellite here and just show you where that cone is in relation to all of this. They did move it actually a little bit west with it, and I know it's been a trend over the last few cycles. You see the cone slightly moving west. They try not move it a lot just so we can have consistency of messaging, but they did move it a little bit, and we could just zoom in right here and show you with this storm. Again, that little 4 you see there means we have now officially from the NHC have a forecast saying it's going to be a Category 4 hurricane. This whole time, we've been saying it's going to be a strong hurricane. We don't know just how strong it could get because it has all this warm water in the Gulf that it can take advantage of, and it looks like, unfortunately, it is going to get to a Cat 4 basically right here in the city in Tallahassee, just a little bit east of it. So let's actually zoom in here for our viewers here in Tallahassee, and then we'll go out and zoom out and then get the full perspective of Florida. But if we can zoom in towards the city of Tallahassee, and we're going to actually do that here in a few minutes, not right now, but we do have the area of the storm right here. We'll go from the Florida perspective at the moment. Here is you can see these bands, just all this moisture plume going into the storm, all these outer bands as well. And it's not part of the immediate center of the storm, I know, but even though those in Fort Myers, even places like Miami aren't in the storm, you're still seeing up to, gusty winds and maybe even some up to tropical storm force in some locations. Some of these outer edges might be even seeing spinny storms, and those can cause tornadoes, discrete tornadoes, if they do develop in that manner. We have no at the moment that we're concerned about, but I just want to make you aware that is a threat we're watching through the night. Any of these outer band storms, particularly on the eastern side, because that's where it's meteorologically favored for a tornado to form.
anywhere on the eastern side is under a tornado watch. This the western coast of the Florida Panhandle, the eastern side of the storm. Places like Tampa up to Cedar Key, down to Fort Myers, you're under a tornado watch, and we're watching for the chance of some of these outer bands producing maybe a tornadic storm or two throughout the night. And I wouldn't rule out one of those here in Tallahassee either, but it's just that climatologically we're favored to see one on the eastern side if we do see one. Now, I do want to address something. I've heard from a few of my friends here in Tallahassee that, traditionally the eastern side of the storm is the strongest, and that's where you see the most punch. But I don't want you to focus on that too much this time. Don't be thinking, well, if the storm skirts a little bit east of us right here, we'll be fine. That's not really the case for two reasons. One, the storm is coming in so close. It's at really close range to us here that even if that is the case, that the western edge on a whole is weaker, that it won't really matter to us because we're so close to the center of the eye, we'll still be seeing the worst effects of the storm. But number two is that looks like we're starting to see some of this wrap around here, and some models are showing us that the western side could actually have quite a bit of a punch this time, which is not usual for this type of storm, but we could be seeing it here with that western edge having a bit of a stronger influence there. That's important to know because if that western edge is stronger, like some of those models predict, we could be seeing hurricane force, maybe up to category 2, 3, maybe even 4 gusts here in the city. And we'll have to see about that. Right now we're looking for lower end hurricane gusts in the city, but even lower end hurricane. I know it sounds a little bit like an oxymoron because it is. Hurricane is still a really strong amount of wind for us here in Tallahassee. We haven't seen a hurricane warning for this city in years. It's important that you know to head indoors when you see that storm coming. Right now, really, it's just important to stay indoors all the way through the end of the storm if you're watching us at the moment. And make sure, again, you already have your supplies. There's no more time to go out and get supplies. You need to be indoors. Your preparations have to be finished by this point. There's no more time to do that. You just have to shelter in place. And if you do, if you do come into a situation where if you happen to be a mobile home, you haven't evacuated yet, I would say pretty much like a tornado here, you need to know a place within the next, really, I would say the next, with a tornado is usually in like 1 to 2 minutes, but this here, you maybe have about 25 to 30 minutes to find a place to go to, a sturdy structure. You don't want to be in a mobile or manufactured home during this storm. A sturdy structure you can go to head indoors and go to the center of that structure. I'm talking like brick with a foundation that will get you through this because Cat 4, that's not something to play around with. These storms are serious, and anyone in the Big Bend area, I'm talking places like even as far as Gainesville, places as far as Panama City could be seeing gusty, maybe even tropical storm force winds from this storm. So it's really important to be taking this storm seriously. So again, here's the track of the storm going out. It will be a tropical storm eventually as it makes its way off towards the north and east, and possibly even a hurricane still in Georgia. So again, here's the track of the storm right here. And right now here is our sky cam, just showing a little bit. I believe this is Cross City or somewhere around Cedar Key, Cross City area. And we're seeing a little bit of a chance for some of these storms coming in. Now you can't really see it now that it's at night, so it's pretty hard to see that. But here is our satellite just showing you with this storm, and it's a little bit there. Thank you. You can see that pinhole eye just really starting to develop. We use that word a lot. What basically that means is it's a really tiny eye. There are some storms that have a huge eye. This one is not one of them. It has a small eye. And that means that that eye wall is smaller, but don't just because it's smaller, don't be saying, well, I'm probably not going to get hit by the worst of the storm. It's fine. I can get through this. This area, the Big Bend area, has not seen a storm this bad in recent memory. I know I've said this statistic a few times in some of our broadcasts tonight, but just for those of you who are joining us, we did have a storm over here, I'd say about this area, that made landfall in 1950 as a major hurricane, and one over here in the 1800s. That's it. Basically, that's our record for this area. Hurricane Michael made landfall over here. The reason that I point that out is because some people in this area got some effects from Michael, but it's important to know that you did not see the Category 5 brunt of the storm during Michael. So don't think that you got through a Cat 5, you'll get through this one just as easily. Most of what this side of the peninsula, or the Panhandle, saw during that storm was tropical storm force, maybe Category 1 gusts, maybe even up to Category 2. What a lot of you guys in the Big Bend will be seeing, including here in Tallahassee, is major hurricane gusts. So you will be seeing chance for discrete power outages. We'll be seeing chances for possibly even widespread power outages, localized flooding. Those on the coast here, you'll be seeing up to 10 feet of storm surge. So imagine 2 people stacked on top of each other And it's not really a good situation for us at all with the way this storm is developing. Really important that with all this jet fuel, with these sea surface temperatures way over 80 in the Gulf Coast, you're taking this storm very seriously. Heather?
Yes, as Robert said, you see some sea surface temperatures are changing once we continue to feel this storm. But right now, as we take a look at Tallahassee and into the Big Bend region, we're starting to see these feeder bands coming in off of the Gulf of Mexico related to Hurricane Idalia. So this is something that we need to start keeping an eye on and be aware at all times of any future watches and warnings that are going to be issued, because these rain bands have a chance to bring about some spin-up tornadoes, some really gusty winds, torrential downpours, lots of lightning. So this is something that you really need to be keeping an eye on, especially along the coast here where you see some heavier rainfall occurring, and that will continue over the next couple of hours. But especially looking down here around Tampa right now, you're seeing a lot of these stronger storms, localized heavier rain amounts, and there's also the risk of storm surge in this area. So as that hurricane continues to move north and east, the water is just going to get funneled straight up into Tampa Bay, and there's nowhere for that water to go. So storm surge is a major concern here. You need to be aware of the situation. If you're still in these areas, you really need to get out of there, hunker down, and just be safe, y'all. But these heavier rain amounts are not something to mess around with. Even further inland as you move in, flooding is still a risk, so that's something that you definitely need to be aware of. All of these heavier rain amounts can occur inland, not just where the eye is. There's also a tornado watch across most of the West Coast, so these rain bands have the chance to cause some spin-up tornadoes, which do pose a risk. So make sure that you have multiple ways to get any weather alerts. Make sure the ringer is on your phone tonight so that if there are any tornado watches or warnings that are issued, you are aware of what is happening. Have a plan in place of where you can go to take shelter, an interior room in your home. Make sure you're in a sturdy structure, because these storms, even if there is not a tornado, there are going to be strong wind gusts. And as you move further north as well, we are going to see those hurricane and tropical storm force winds coming in over the next few hours. So that is definitely something that you need to be aware of and prepare for. Especially in Tallahassee here, we're seeing these rain bands start to move up, and we're expecting inches and inches of rain, and this area floods really easily. So just be aware of the risk. Inland flooding is a big concern with this hurricane. Again, you see the cone where that's going to go. That shows where the eye of the hurricane can go. You're going to feel widespread impacts even outside of that. So don't get lulled into a false sense of security. This is a situation that you need to be aware of, especially along the coast here, where storm surge is a major concern. We are expecting 10 to 15 feet of storm surge, so this is a big risk. If you're in these areas, I urge you to find a safe place further inland, a shelter wherever you can. It is not safe to be by the coast at this time. And with the full moon, the high tides are going to really just make that storm surge a real situation. So move further inland if you have the chance, and hunker down, because these are going to be really dangerous conditions, as this hurricane is now forecast to make landfall as a Category 4 storm with 130-mile-per-hour wind gusts somewhere along the Big Bend region here. So definitely be prepared, have your plan in place. If you're in you need to be in a sturdy structure, interior room, away from windows, and just make sure that you're hunkered down. Stay off the streets, know what's coming, know the risks, and be safe, because these conditions are coming your way. For the satellite, you can see that the storm is really starting to intensify, so that's something to keep an eye on these high cloud tops show increased precipitation. And for the visible satellite, you see this eye starting to become really pronounced and will continue to intensify throughout the night before landfall. But now I'm going to hand things off to Robert.
Great, thank you. Continuing to look at this really strong storm here.
And we're going to just do a quick recap before we take a quick break, and then we'll come right back for you at the top of the next hour. So again, we're continuing our live coverage here on FSU Weather, and we will be continuing all throughout the night. And as I said a while back, we did still have that chance for that Category 4 possibly landfall near Tallahassee. So again, it's just really important to emphasize that we are seeing the chance for not just a major hurricane, but even a Category 4 landfall in Tallahassee. So just a dangerous situation for all of us here, particularly on the coast. I want to emphasize that the coast, now I have said a lot about Tallahassee because that's where our viewer base is here for Florida State University, but we have quite a lot of people on the coast here, and we have that chance for storm surge, and that's where you have that worst chance for that hurricane condition. So again, we're watching Idalia as it gets through, and as soon as we get to around the 6 a.m. hour, we will continue wall-to-wall coverage of the hurricane as it makes its way through. So here's the Atlantic-wide shot. Here is the whole view of everything. We have Franklin, Category 3 still there, Idalia, just barely a Category 2, but I mean barely on the other end, barely almost a Cat 3, and possibly even with the next advisory it could get up to that point because recon hasn't been at the storm in a while. It's possibly maybe even a Cat 3 right now. They just haven't been able to make their way out there, but we will see very soon. We do have a depression 11 out here. It's not really a worry for us at the moment. And then a formation, again, that's not a worry for us either. So we're going to zoom in on the storm of the hour, Idalia. Wind is 110 miles per hour. It's moving at 17 to the north. It's actually a tick down from where it was the previous advisory, I think, 18, but these fluctuations, don't read too much into them. It's moving pretty quickly, almost at 20. So that's a pretty quick mover. And 9:58. It is now a 958 millibar storm. That means it's really strong for a Cat 2 and now almost a Cat 3 level. So we're getting into that area with the landfall there. Category 4, 130. Here is Tallahassee right here. We are barely just to the west, which means we could be seeing some of the worst impacts from the storm. Time to hunker down now. You can't be going outside during the storm. Don't be going outside at all. Even if in the city you see, it's letting up a little bit. No, this storm is not one you want to be messing around with. This is where the core is right here. It's going to be packing a punch once it gets here, and it will be here for a while. I know I said it's moving fast, 20 miles per hour, but we could be seeing the impacts from this storm basically wall to wall all the way from around like 2 to 3 a.m. all the way until around 2 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And we could be seeing lingering effects after that. So important to remember that this is a continuing situation here and a continuing one that we will continue to watch. I could say continue a few times there with the storm moving off towards the north and east. But it will eventually be clear with a chance for a tropical storm there. And again, that is an important situation for us to consider there. Here is our night cam right now. Not a lot to see with storm-wise here. We are watching, again, a chance for these storms to move in, and once we do on the day, we will be able to see that these storms are clearly in effect there. But one last time, the visible satellite just showing you that eye wall really developing really quickly there, and it's really wrapped up with us there. And we have a lot of jet fuel for us. With sea surface temperatures over 80 degrees Fahrenheit, it is helping fuel this storm, and it's going to get to that Cat 4 strength. And we'll have Josh close us out.
Okay. So we're actually going to talk about our preparation for the storm. So before we go into that, we're going to talk about the actual.
I was clicking a bunch of times.
To make sure you understand what's going on with the categories of each storm. So we start off with Category 1 to just a minimal hurricane. It has winds of 74 miles an hour, what you see on the highway. So you will get some damage, but it's not super severe. We then moved up to a Category 2. More severe than Category 1 with more damage especially, and you have a lot more stronger storm surge as well as a lot more trees down and a lot more damage to the houses. We are currently at Category 3, which means that coastal flooding is very likely, and not only that, we'll have a lot more power lines snapped and major damage to homes. So that's something you would need to make sure. That's something that's overall just very bad. But also keep in mind that Category 3 is where we start to see is the first category of major hurricanes. Then we make our way to Category 4, which is what we are thinking of is going to happen when we have landfall in about the next few hours. So that is something you have. This is very catastrophic, and it'll cause a lot of damage. And Category 5 is what we saw with Michael, where we had many homes were very much damaged or destroyed. And then we also had a lot of, not only that, but infrastructure was down across the Panama City Bay area, as well as trees were blown off. So for storm surge, one thing you have to keep in mind is that while 3 feet of storm surge may not seem like much, once you get to 6 and 12 feet, 6 feet is my height, more or less, and then 12 feet is double that height, or double my height, or double Ian's height, as we mentioned earlier. And it practically engulfs the entire first floor of a building. That's something so if you're near the coast and you try to outrun that, you're not going to be able to do that. It's going to be too late. You need to, if anything, you need to establish that shelter now and get away from the coast immediately. So it's more or less too late to prepare right as of right now. We're now getting ready to go into the storm. So you need to stay and listen for emergency alerts. You need to take refuge in a safe or secure building. So no mobile homes, no cars, no underpasses or overpasses. This wouldn't even work for a tornado, which also we could have a risk for tornadoes. So that's something you would need to keep in mind. And if your home starts to flood, stay inside and try and go to higher ground in your house if you can. So, and then for after the storm, one thing you have to do is pay attention to local officials for info and instructions. Don't try to go out and go explore, because there could still be down power lines and down trees. And make sure you save your phone calls and phone battery life for emergencies and to document damage if needed. Another thing that people don't keep in mind is that you could also easily get killed via carbon monoxide poisoning by trying to run generators inside your home. So make sure when you do run those, make sure they're outside of your home and you do that, because if not, you could be in very much danger. Don't try to go through floodwaters. It's not worth it, and you don't know what's in there. Don't try to run generators inside buildings, as I mentioned, for risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. And you could also don't risk electrocution with trying to touch down power lines. So, and now we're going to pass things off to Heather to close out the show.
Yes, so moving on, we are going to be looking at some of the hazards that are going to be coming with this storm. So looking at the big picture, we are seeing most of the West Coast and into the Big Bend region under hurricane warnings. So you're going to see the chance of those hurricane force winds coming in over the next couple of hours. So you need to be preparing for those stronger wind gusts. These darker red regions are tropical storm warnings, and there you're going to be seeing those tropical storm force wind gusts. So again, just something to be aware of. Again, you see the area where the cone is, that is just where the center of the storm can go, not the entire wind field. So even if you're not in the cone, you're still going to be feeling those impacts. So that's just something to be aware of. These impacts are spreading far and wide, so just be looking out for those over the next couple of hours. But the GFS model coming in, it is showing a possible coming into the coast around the St. Mark's area, coming up through Tallahassee. So we're going to be seeing some really strong wind gusts as that hurricane starts to come in. So just be aware over the next couple of hours, you can maybe see those tropical storm force winds starting to impact us starting around 2 a.m. and the hurricane will make landfall as forecasted around 8 a.m. So just something to keep an eye on over the next couple of hours. The Euro forecast model is showing same kind of story. The storm is going to make landfall somewhere around here and then push off to the northeast. So again, just prepare for those strong wind gusts and the storm surge that's going to come with that, because that is a major concern for this region, 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. So just prepare if you're on the coast. Like, this is a very serious situation and you need to move further inland and be safe. There is the risk of flooding with this storm today and into tomorrow, especially along the coast, as I said, where you're going to see the storm surge, the rainfall, locally heavier amounts, especially right along the coast and moving up into Tallahassee. So there is a slight risk of flooding. And again, into tomorrow, that risk, moderate risk, spreading across into Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. And the rainfall forecast, you see we're expecting maybe even like 5 to 10 inches of rainfall in Tallahassee and in the surrounding regions. So just prepare for these locally heavier rain amounts and inland flooding. And the Euro rainfall forecast is showing pretty much the same thing. Inland flooding is a big concern with the storm and flooding along the coast. So that's going to also play into with the storm surge as well. Flooding is a major concern. So active alerts. There is storm surge warnings all along the coast of the Big Bend, something to be aware of. 10 to 15 feet of storm surge. This is a serious situation, unprecedented for this region, so something to really keep an eye on and be aware of. And zooming in, you see this is a big concern, especially around St. Mark's and in the Appalachee Bay. But yeah, stay tuned for future watches and warnings.